Good morning, students. Today let me start another new chapter of the same unit, that is serendipity. Okay. Now in this chapter you are going to study the role of chance in making scientific discoveries. Okay. What do you mean by that? Accidentally some discoveries were done. Okay. That means some of the compounds were discovered. So all these things you are going to study in this chapter. All right. Now which are the main contents of this slide? Origin of the word serendipity, gun cotton, velcro, X-rays, microwave and superglue. All right. First let us study origin of the word serendipity. Okay. Now serendip is the old Arabic name for Ceylon. Now it is known as Sri Lanka. Okay, you must be knowing that. The origin of the word serendipity is in a Persian fairy tale. The three princes of Serendip were always making discoveries by accidents and sagacity of things they were not in quest of. In the 16th century, the Persian fairy tale was translated to Italian and from Italian to French. Horace Walpole 1717 to 1797, an Englishman, encountered it in a collection of oriental tales in French and coined the English term serendipity. Okay. Now today the word serendipity is a word that is used in everyday language. The Oxford English Dictionary defines it as the faculty of making happy and unexpected discoveries by accident, and Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary as the faculty of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. The Stedman's Medical Dictionary, serendipity refers to an accidental discovery, that is, finding one thing while looking for something else. Hence, serendipity means an unplanned, fortunate discovery. Alright. The notion of serendipity is a common occurrence throughout the history of scientific discovery. Let us now look at some of the path breaking discoveries in science. Okay. First one is gun cotton. A German chemist, Christian Skonbin, used to carry out chemistry experiments at home, much against the wishes of his wife Emily. One day in 1846, he heated a flask containing a mixture of concentrated nitric acid and concentrated sulfuric acids on the kitchen stove. Emily was not at home at the time. The flask broke, spilling the acid over the floor. Emily's cotton apron was near at hand, and so the story goes. Skonbin grabbed it to wipe out the hot liquid. He then hung up the apron to dry. All of a sudden, there was a loud whoosh, and apron was consumed in flames. Skonbin had unwittingly prepared nitrocellulose, a highly flammable material that later became known as gun cotton. Following his discovery of gun cotton, Skonbin sent samples of what he called his curious substance to Faraday and other scientists in England. He sent a letter to Dumas saying, "You know, I think I have discovered a very simple method of transforming cotton into a material possessing all the necessary properties of a propellant." For much of the 19th century, European armies used gunpowder as a propellant for firing guns. Gunpowder is a mixture of charcoal, sulfur and potassium nitrate. It produces a lot of smoke when ignited. Skonbin pointed out to Dumas that his curious substance was not only much more powerful than gunpowder, but also left no residue and produced no smoke. Okay. Now let us say the second compound, Velcro. The Velcro brand of hook and loop was invented by a man named George de Mestral in the year 1940 while hunting in the Jura mountains in Switzerland. Mr. de Mestral, a Swiss engineer, realized that the tiny hooks of the cockleburs were stuck on his pants and in his dog's fur and wondered how they attached themselves. Under the scrutiny of the microscope, he observed the hooks engaging the loops in the fabric of his pants. Velcro inventor de Mestral, along with help from friends in the weaving business, finally duplicated Mother Nature's hook and loop fastener in the manufacturing plant. The result of his new invention was Velcro brand hook and loop fasteners. The actual technology behind a Velcro brand fastener is a hook and loop fastener. The rough side is called the hook and the soft side is called the loop. Each fastener is made up of two pieces of materials, one with lots of tiny loops and the other with lots of tiny hooks. Okay. And when two sides are pressed together, the hooks cling to the loops. The more hooks and loops that are attached, the stronger the bond. The hooks and loops in Velcro are commonly made from nylon and polyester, with the hooks being more rigid and thicker than the loops. Alright. Now let us see the third compound, that is X-rays. In 1895, German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen was working with the cathode ray tube. The tube was covered, but a fluorescent screen nearby would still glow when the tube was on and the room was dark. The rays were illuminating the screen. Röntgen tried blocking the rays, but most things he placed in front made no difference. However, when he placed his hand in front of the tube, he noticed he could see his bones on the image projected onto the screen. The tube was replaced with the photographic plate and the first X-ray images produced. Okay. Now let us look into the fourth discovery, that is a microwave. The heating effect of a high power microwave beam was discovered in the year 1945 by Percy Spencer, an American engineer working for the company Raytheon. He was working on a magnetron capable of beaming high waves of radiation, when he noticed that a chocolate bar in his pocket had melted. Curious, he placed a bowl of popcorn in front of the tube and it began to pop. Spencer then created a high density electromagnetic field by feeding microwave power from a magnetron into a metal box from which he could not escape. When food was placed in the box, its temperature quickly rose. In October that year, Raytheon patented the technology and it became available to the public in the year 1947. Okay. Now let us say the fifth compound, that is superglue. Superglue was invented by accident twice. Superglue was also known as cyanoacrylate, was originally discovered in the year 1942 by Dr. Harry Coover. Coover was attempting to make clear plastic gun sights to be put on guns used by soldiers in the World War II. One particular formulation he came up with did not work well for gun sights, but worked fantastically as an extremely quick bonding adhesive. Surprisingly, despite the commercial potential of such a product, Coover abandoned that formulation completely, as it obviously was not suitable for his current project, being too sticky. 9 years later, in 1951, now working at Eastman Kodak, Dr. Coover was the supervisor of a project looking at developing a heat-resistant acrylate polymer for jet canopies. Fred Joyner was working on that project and at one point used the discovered superglue and tested it by spreading ethyl cyanoacrylate between a pair of refractometer prisms. To his surprise, the prisms became stuck very solidly together. This time, Coover did not abandon the cyanoacrylate, that is superglue. Rather, he realized the great potential of a product that would quickly bond to a variety of materials. Superglue was finally put on the market in the year 1958 by Eastman Kodak and was called Eastman 910. They later renamed it as superglue. Okay. Now let us say the next compound, Mauve. In the mid-19th century, the British Empire was adding colonies in tropical areas where more and more soldiers were contracting malaria. The only medical remedy that existed at the time was quinine, a natural substance expensive to obtain since it was extracted from the bark of the Sinoco tree, which only grew in the tropical forests of the Andes, that is South America. It was urgent to find a more affordable way to obtain quinine, and that was to synthesize it artificially in the laboratory. Focused on the task were the young student William Henry Perkin and his professor, the celebrated German chemist August Wilhelm von Hofmann. During the Easter vacation of 1856, while Hofmann was visiting his family, Perkin tried a new idea in a small laboratory of his house in London. That was to oxidize another known compound, that is aniline, to obtain quinine. He did not succeed, and the experiment left behind a solid blackish precipitate in the beaker. Okay. While trying to clean up the result of his mistake with the alcohol, Perkin noticed that the material contained a substance with a purplish hue. At the age of only 19, without intending to do so, he had just obtained the world's first synthetic dye, which today we know by multiple names: aniline purple, Mauve, purple aniline, or Perkins mallow. Okay. Next, let us see Teflon. Polytetrafluoroethylene, better known as PTFE or Teflon, was invented by accident at a DuPont laboratory in New Jersey in the year 1938. Alright. Roy Plunkett, an Ohio-born chemist, was attempting to make a new CFC refrigerant when he noticed that a canister of tetrafluoroethylene, despite appearing to be empty, weighed as much as it were full. Cutting the canister open with a saw, Plunkett found that the gas had reacted with the iron in the canister shell and had coated its insides with polymerized polytetrafluoroethylene, a waxy, water repellent, non-stick substance. Okay. DuPont soon saw the potential of Plunkett's discovery and began mass producing PTFE. In the year 1954, the same substance was used to coat cookware to stop food sticking to it. Alright. Now let us see the next compound, saccharin. In 1878 or 79, Konstantin Fahlberg, a chemist studying the properties of oxidized coal tar at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, discovered while eating his meal on evening that food he picked up with his fingers tasted sweeter than normal. He traced the sweetening effect back to the chemical he had been working with that day, that is orthosulfobenzoic acid. Amide. Nothing its potential He quickly set up a business of mass producing a sweetener under the name saccharin. Alright. Now let us see stainless steel. Harry Burley, born in Sheffield, England in the year 1871, was appointed lead researcher at Brown Fish Laboratories. 1908, Burley was given a task by a small arms manufacturer who wished to prolong the life to their gun barrels, which were eroding away too quickly. Burley set out to create erosion resistant steel, not corrosion resistant steel, and began experimenting with steel alloys containing chromium. During these experiments, Burley made several variations of his alloys ranging from 6% to 15% chromium with the differing measures of carbon and discarded them in a pile if they did not meet his criteria. However, on the 13th August 1913, Burley created steel with 12.8% chromium and 0.24% carbon, which after a few weeks he noted that this discarded prototype still appeared like new. He examined it and found that it was made with the unique combination of chromium and carbon, 12.8% chromium and 0.24% carbon, argued to be the first ever stainless steel. Burley found that his new steel resisted chemical attacks, including lemon juice and vinegar. He took this discovery to the local cutlery market, where it found instant success, filling the gap between the cheap steel utensils that were damaged easily and the resilient silver ones that were too expensive for most people. Now let us see the 10th compound, safety matches, how it was discovered. Okay. The modern striking match was inadvertently invented in the year 1826 when an English apothecary, a person who prepared and sold medicines and drugs, named John Walker, used a wooden stick to stir a mixture of starch, potassium chlorate, antimony sulphide and other ingredients. A bit of this mixture dried on the end of the stirring stick, and when Walker attempted to scrape and dried bit off by rubbing it across stone flooring, the first non-friction match ignited. Walker apparently did not see the massive earning potential in his invention, choosing instead to simply show off his stick for the amusement of small audiences. An enterprising man named Samuel Jones attended one of these demonstrations, and he ended up marketing the first mass-produced matches. Jones marketed these matches under the name Lucifer's in reference to the fiery nature of his product. Okay. The safety match was invented in the year 1844 in Sweden by Gustav Erik Pasch, improved on by John Edward Lundstrom, and prevented unintentional combustion by separating the reactive ingredients between the match head and the striking surface. The head of safety matches are made of an oxidizing agent such as potassium chlorate mixed with sulfur, fillers and glass powder. The side of the box contains red phosphorus binder and powdered glass. Alright, this is the discovery of what? Safety matches. So I will stop at this stage. Okay, so please go through all the slides. Any clarification, please contact me. Alright, thank you.